Hello. Well, we've made it to the end, almost to the end of a second edition of Meet Magento Japan. I have the privilege of being the only thing between all of you and drinks and food, so I'll do my best to get us there in style. So when we were thinking about what I could discuss, what I should discuss here, it just made sense to kind of walk through the journey of how we got to where we are today. That's my contact information. I am Magento's developer, evangelist, platform evangelist. I've also been a trainer for a very long time for Magento. And as you can see, of course, my email, pretty easy to remember. It took me a long time to get that email address. I'll talk about that more in a bit. So, I guess the first thing to ask is the question to ask is, where did this journey start? Because you kind of have to understand, you really can only frame a destination based on the beginning. So for Magento, it started simply by setting out to build the best, most impactful open source commerce platform in the world. Quite simply. And that's not me making that up. That's actually a conversation I had with Roy Rubin, who is our founder and has now recently rejoined Magento on the board. The big question, of course, is how did we do this? And we did it by empowering, putting control, giving the control to the workers in the system, giving the control to the merchants, giving the control to developers, the agencies, and connecting them. So, we have some pretty strong numbers, I think, for what started out as a small effort in Los Angeles back in 2007. 250,000 Magento powered sites. That's what we know about. Globally, every year, there's $50 billion. That's billion with a B. $50 billion of commerce happens through Magento Codebase. It's quite an impressive number. And the most important thing for me, the thing that underpins all of this is our worldwide community. So that community is here. You are all here, and you're all part of that community. And it spans the globe, and it manifests in so many different ways as I go from place to place. So we were just on a tour through Singapore, through China. I was in Germany. I was in about 80 events this year. And it's a little bit different everywhere, but there is this common thread and there is this connection that we have to one another. So let's look at this journey. 2007 through 2015. What we did was we set out, if you go and you can find some of the archives of the original Magento blog posts, which I wish were still online, but we have a worldwide community that started just with some blog posts saying, hey, we're going to fill a hole, we're going to build this e-commerce application, and it's going to be open. And that got everyone's interest turned on. And they back then, Roy and Yoav, they teased this for a little while, and they built up interest. And then when they released it, it grew faster than they could ever hope. It was just all they could do to keep up with demand. And what they did once it was released, if you go back to the very early days, I started as a developer at an agency in 2008, and in the very early days, I think I started with Magento 1.1.6. There were a lot of features missing that we know now. So things like downloadable products, bundle products, and several others. And those features didn't just accidentally become, they weren't accidentally created. They were created based on the feedback that we got from the developers, from the merchants about what was important. And this is an important part of the story as we move forward. We also knew from the beginning that we could not possibly build all of the features that people are going to want, nor should we. Sometimes features are specific to there are features specific to a domain. There are features specific to certain markets. We can't be experts in all of these things. So we have Magento Connect, and that is it's analogous to an app store. But that extension ecosystem is part of what makes Magento work in so many different markets. And then, of course, Magento was acquired by eBay, right? So this happened in 2011. And at the same time, Magento had also realized that there was an enterprise market out there. It's a very interesting story, I believe, that Yoav, co-founder, told about going to trade shows and showing off in Silicon Valley and showing off Magento, showing off all the features, and people just going, wow, it's great. How do you make money? And said, we don't know. So what had happened, though, was that they started talking about this enterprise, this paid version of Magento, and they had people coming up to them, people like, I think Visio was one, big electronic screen manufacturer, and said, hey, thank you so much. We've been secretly using Magento because it was exactly what we needed, but we really, really needed to have a paid engagement with you. So this was part of the monetization strategy. And eBay really liked that. eBay also liked how much money goes through PayPal via Magento sites. And what that did was it gave Magento a lot of support, and gave Magento more, quite frankly, more funding to develop, and then eventually to start developing Magento 2. So if we're going to start talking about Magento 2, now if you go back, one of our co-founders actually mentioned Magento 2 for the first time, I think all the way back in 2010. And we'll say that development was not necessarily continuous since then. There were some distractions at eBay. With focus on different priorities, and Magento was a piece. But really, Magento always came back into focus. So really, if you're going to talk about Magento 2, 2014 is the year that it really begins in earnest. So with Magento 2, we wanted to collaborate even more deeply with our developers. So we planned a series of tech forums where we actually had developers come out, and we had them engage with us. They try out the product, tell us what you like, tell us what you don't like. We also put all of our work on GitHub. And now this allows people to contribute directly. Do you know that for Magento 1, if you wanted to contribute, you have to sign a contributor license agreement? And the same is true for Magento 2. However, for Magento 1, you literally had to print off a piece of paper, sign it, and fax it in order to contribute. That was what we call a high friction process. So For us, for Magento 2, what we did was we actually retooled our workflow, and we allowed we actually allow people to contribute directly to the core via pull request. So this fits. This is a basic expectation of people engaging with an open source system, and we saw tremendous benefit from that already. We've had thousands, literally thousands of interactions with our developers today. And all of this is facilitated on GitHub. So if you go to GitHub right now, you can see an entire list of issues, and you can see the code submissions that have been made. You can also see that a number of those code submissions were actually pulled into the core product when it was released. We also knew that we had to improve the extension ecosystem, by which I mean sometimes in the Magento world in the past, extension quality has been dubious at best. There was also some issues with some fraud in terms of people stealing each other's code. Another aspect of where we are now, and I'll dig into each of these a little bit more, is our independence from eBay. We're now a private company. And then we also knew that it was necessary to continue to grow this community, grow it in more places, and grow it to include more faces. So where we are now, the Magento that you currently have standing before you, direct contribution via GitHub. Again, this is a complete change from how things worked with Magento 1, and actually we've included the license agreement as just part of a pull request. So if you send us some code to use, it's just part of the process of checking that in. We now have our feature requests. We moved those from GitHub, and we've pulled them over into our community forum. Now that's just community.magento.com. There you can see which features have already been requested, and you can also upvote those features. And believe me, we pay attention to that. We pay attention to that feedback. That helps us prioritize what to make next. We also engaged in a ton of UX research. So there's a lot of things that happen when you think about Magento 1 and where it's been and where it is. It's not the most friendly to use. If you're an admin walking around at your store and you want to work, maybe you want to do pick lists or something, and you're trying to work off an iPad, it's not very touch friendly. And there's a reason for that. And it's because Magento was created in 2007, and we weren't exactly walking around with our iPads at the time. So we did a lot of research, and you can see some of the interface here, where we move things over to the left so that you can navigate with your thumbs. We cleaned up that interface, and we made it much more responsive. Now, this has given us a lot of advantages here. We also, as part of our change, part of our modernization of the code base, built in more ways to customize. That is the secret sauce, of course, for Magento, is flexibility and the ability to customize, to turn off, to add to core behavior. And so we've built in more customization points. For you developers in the room, this means we've actually built a system where every single public method is now essentially a consumable event around which you can execute and manipulate any of the any code or data that you choose. This is a great power that you have a great responsibility to execute, to use wisely. We are also continuing to build out our API layer. Our most recent release, 2.1, did see some updates to the sales API, for example. And that is another area where we always request feedback so we can prioritize what we're developing. Our catalog and checkout, one of the big failings of Magento 1, in my opinion, When it came out in 2007, the so-called one-page checkout was very, it was new and it was powerful. Unfortunately, it was created in such a way that it was a real pain to customize. So if you are a developer, and I think probably here in the Japanese market it's very much the same as it is outside of the US. Our checkout is very geared towards the US. So you had to get in and to dig in and really make some very difficult changes, or maybe use an extension that itself was very heavy and digging way down deep into the code. So we rebuilt it from the ground up, actually with the help of some of our illustrious community members. And we also took a look at the catalog flow, adding simple things like being able to add complex products from category pages. We've also simplified some of the admin tasks. For example, the creation of composite products, right? So the products that are really just a collection of multiple products. Think of a shirt with multiple sizes. In Magento 1, you actually have to create each of the individual stock items by hand. We've taken that step out, and now all you have to do in Magento 2 is define configurable attributes, create the product, and all of the subproducts are just automatically created. Just one example. Another example is our grid utility. So the ability to filter, right, and sort, add attributes to the list, basically add columns of data, but then also be able to save those grid configurations so that you don't have to recreate these every time you log in. Turns out a lot of people do use this, especially folks who are merchandising or who are trying to just generate a report every day on stock items, etc. And we are also adding a whole suite of new features. We've improved our search architecture. We actually have, for our enterprise, we've added a staging feature that is absolutely gorgeous to behold. It's a real work. It's completely different from how staging worked in Magento 1. And it itself is an extensible system, so it allows you to schedule promotions, multiple promotions. It allows you to schedule content changes that can be product data, that can be category data, that can be also CMS content. And you can schedule multiple campaigns and visualize all of those campaigns in one easy-to-use interface. We also are currently alpha testing a B2B add-on. So this is an effort to help you bootstrap your B2B work. Essentially, it's the missing piece when you want to take Magento, which at its core is a business-to-consumer platform. Our B2B module provides a lot of features that most B2B sites need, such as approval workflows for order creation, and individual price lists for customers. Things that can become problematic with Magento's B2C focus. This solves a lot of these problems. It's been very well received. Actually, I just found out one site is already live. I don't really recommend to go live with alpha software, but one is already live. And we also took heart with performance. So performance is built into the core, and we have some white papers that talk about this. We also have some community-led effort to benchmark Magento 2 so that you can verify for yourself. Let's see. Our marketplace, so the ability to just use other people's work, that's at the core of open source, right? Collaborating together, not having to recreate the wheel again and again. So we have a proper app store now. Magento Connect is more or less a thing of the past. Our app store approach has us sharing revenue, so it's a 70-30 split with the extension vendors. We have an automated quality control. We've referenced, actually a couple people have referenced our quality control analysis. That set of rules is available as well on GitHub, and you can use this to verify your own work, and you can also use this to verify extensions before you submit them to us. And what we've done is, because we are taking tight control of all the categories, we have a limited number of extensions per feature. For example, social login. We've also made some dramatic changes to our technology partner program. This is the app store that we always should have had, right? This big time. If anyone here has been doing Magento development for some time, probably you've used some extensions, and probably a good chunk of your time was actually spent making those extensions work. And that's not how it's supposed to be at all. You should be able to download the extension, implement it into your store, and just have it work. Now, some of the ways that we, basically what has facilitated all of this has been Premera. You may not know the name Premera. You know a lot of the Premera brands like TeamViewer, Doc Martens, Hugo Boss. They are a private equity firm, and they thought, they still think, Magento is a gem. And so they acquired us when eBay was spinning things out. We really like having essentially a rich uncle there to fund some of our adventures. So it allows us to move quickly. It allows us, it gives us free capital that we can use to acquire technologies. So we also don't have to coordinate all the way up through the whole eBay family, PayPal, StubHub, all these disparate properties that we had to kind of align with strategically. Well, now we can focus on ourselves. We are also leveraging Premera's funding to spin up teams. This includes teams here. We're actually hiring here in Southeast Asia. I'm not quite sure where we're going to have staff, but I believe my best guess would be Singapore. So you will feel Magento's presence in this region within the next few months. We bought an analytics company, RJ Metrics. You will see that folded into our core. It's a freemium model, but you'll see that folded into our core in an upcoming release. We also have announced our Enterprise Cloud Edition. Now this is an AWS plus New Relic plus Blackfire IO, so a couple of e-commerce and programming analytical tools. It also has a deployment strategy. So this is implemented via Platform SH, which is just a company that is part of this deal, and also integrated into this is CDN via Fastly. So what this means is it's an entire stack, an entire platform as a service stack, for which you pay just one invoice. And we also have, in our divorce from eBay, we got the Commerce Order Manager. Now this is a big omni-channel solution. Essentially, it is designed to match requirements, whatever they may be. It actually can run. It can run without Magento. In fact, we know we have at least one Demandware client using our Commerce Order Management system. I can tell more details about that if you want to catch me at the party. And Finally, our commitment. Magento, a couple years ago, began in earnest to reconnect with the community. There was a little focus on enterprise for a couple years there. But since that time, we've spun up a number of resources for the benefit of everyone. So Magento U, this is our education arm. I've been teaching for Magento U since 2011. There are Magento2 courses available right now, and they were available when Magento2 was released last year. This was important because we gave everyone a 3-year ramp. So in November 2018, Magento1 will no longer be supported by us. So you should get trained up. And by the way, December and January, Magento U courses for Magento 2 are free. So please go and sign up. And especially for you all, let me know. Maybe it makes sense for us to provide a translation into Japanese. So these are online courses. You can go and see the list. I'm not sure if we have the promotion actually announced on the site yet, but please be aware that that's going to happen. We also have DevDocs. We hired tech writers. We found that having tech writers on staff made it much more likely to actually write technical documentation. Imagine that. We are out in force at all kinds of events. So we are supporting the meetups via meetup.com. We have myself and my coworker Sherry, who is our community manager. She does a number of things, like she created the Magento Masters program. She runs our forums, but we are actually out at events. I think we've the two of us together, I believe, about 100 events this year, just to connect with you all, just to hear your concerns, to hear what we're doing right. And speaking of Magento Masters, I think we have at least one or two in the house, at least one in the house. Yes, he's one of our masters. These are people who we've decided are absolutely superlative in a huge community full of superlative people. So, as always, thank you very much for your efforts. And we, as a company, are now officially partnered with Meet Magento. You'd be surprised that we weren't partners for so many years, and this was a big concern for me and for them, but this allows us to have to engage in strategic initiatives as the Meet Magento brand continues, that imprint continues to grow. I think there are plans next year for 50 events. So someone tell my wife hi if you see her. Why does any of this matter, right? It matters because there are so many people in this world, there's certainly a lot of people in this room, for whom Magento is your income, it's your family's security, it's the success of merchants. And for the merchants, it's your brand's accessibility to your customers. Magento can make the best platform in the world, but it doesn't matter if we don't have people in the local markets, if we don't have people to take Magento and adapt it to what the merchants and their consumers need. That's why this matters. Because we have to work together to make this continue to succeed. So while you're here, please celebrate the fact that you're in the Magento community. Make sure, please, to connect with each other. Hopefully you've met at least one person you didn't know before today, but I encourage you to make that connection at the party. So, be glad that you're here for Meet Magento Japan, and I thank you all for being a part of this journey. And if you would have any questions for me, I think my time is up. I'll be next door. I heard there will be beer. Thank you very much.